About Beer receives underwriting support from Madfitz Brewery. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. This is a continuation of last week's podcast where I sat down with a smart bunch of local artisans to talk about the nature of their businesses and the principles at their core. Recorded at Wheatland Spring Farm and Brewery in Virginia, we go deeper into the themes set up last week in this week's episode, and you'll hear it all in just a moment. But first, I'm going to invite you to keep up with all of the events we have going on and more by visiting our social media. We're at All About Beer across the major platforms. And if you have comments, guest suggestions, or just want to reach out, you can always email me at johnhall@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of email, if you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter. That's one of the best ways that we'll be getting you all that we're producing right to your eyeballs. And we're also supported by you. Please head to allaboutbeer.com/support. There you can learn how just a few bucks can have a huge impact in supporting original journalism in the beer space and keeping us going. On that note, thanks to this episode's sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp makes it easy for breweries to stock up on the essential packaging and promotional supplies all in one place. From beer labels and keg collars to coasters, beer boxes, and more, they've got you covered. Plus, every product is backed by their 100% satisfaction guarantee, and their full-time support squad is ready to help anytime. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. If you're running a brewery, owner or operator, Beer 30 by The Fifth Ingredient is the ultimate command center. The most powerful brewery management software on the market, Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. Last week on the show, you heard a storytelling session recorded at Wheatland Spring Farm and Brewery in early June 2025. After that was over, the panel headed over to the brewery's barn away from the crowds to continue the conversation. The panel was put together by John Branding, the co-founder of the brewery, and each of the guests have stories and perspectives that can benefit us all. So this panel includes Rubba of Oyster in Washington, D.C., Christian Gregory of Dry Fonteinen, Sarah Searle of Quartzwood Farm Winery in Virginia, and of course, John Branding. Here's our conversation. So I was just talking about how all of your individual businesses are place-driven, be it the land that it's on or where you're sourcing from and the relationships that you all have and the education, and this is a jump ball question, but how did you come to the importance of here as a concept? And I don't know who want to take that first, but
I can go.
Yeah. All right, Christian. Yeah. I mean, it's probably easiest for you with the history of Dry Fontaine. Yeah. Yeah.
So I.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So with lambic, it is intrinsically tied to place, not in the same way that an appellation d'origine in France is to wine, but close. In Belgium, we don't have the same protections, but traditionally, lambic is only brewed in the Pajottenland or the Zena River Valley. So just like by definition, it's pretty important to us. We wouldn't be who we are without that. But the bigger thing, I think, is that it's tied to the culture in the area. Going back, this is more lore, I guess, but to like Bruegel paintings from the 1500s, they have earthenware jugs at weddings depicted, and people are drinking probably spontaneously fermented similar beer. So yeah, it goes back so far. For us, there's been a lot of debate, I guess, in the lambic community about whether you can brew something that's maybe not exactly the same, but very, very close elsewhere. And some people have shown that you pretty much can. Their brewery, Jester King in Texas, for example, has been working really hard for years and years to emulate what what lambic is. But they still don't call it that. So yeah, for us, it's almost like a Crémant d'Alsace versus a Champagne. So you can brew something similar, but also like tied to the name of lambic is the place. Beyond that, though, it is just like a perfect environment for this. It's changing actually with climate change. I mean, with our brewing, we have to only brew during the colder months of the year. If we brew and cool the wort in the cool ship during the warmer months, we invite Acetobacter and other sort of nasty things that we don't want in the lambic. So we have to brew during colder months. That season has shortened, but we also are, Belgium is a flat country more or less, but we're the highest of the lambic breweries in the Zena River Valley. So that helps us brew a bit longer. Anyway, so there are all these little things that, whether it's on the technical side, whether it's the cultural side, or just naming standards like that, they all tie us directly to the place. So yeah, I had the softball question there. But.
Well, I want to hear from everybody else on that, but when you brought up climate change, both Sarah and John nodded vigorously. Sarah, if you can jump in on that then, and then we'll kind of come back to,
Yeah, this is a good question. There's lots of ways to think about place, right? So I guess the first thing I want to say is that, I would be remiss. I'm sitting in a room with mostly white people, so I do want to acknowledge that unlike Europe, this area does have an indigenous, sense of place that actually has been largely lost. So I'm speaking from a place of privilege in that way. But what I would say is something really interesting is Ben and I grew up around here. Ben has lived here since he was 3 in Lovettsville, which is just up the road. My family moved here when I was 11. We both went off and did other things and were like, ugh, Loudoun County, why would we ever want to be there? And both eventually made our way back here. Ben caught the wine growing bug in New Zealand, where he was working on organic farms through both the North and South Island, and came back and was like, oh, people are making wine in Loudoun County, this area that I grew up in and is a part of who I am. But they're all just trying to emulate sort of watered down versions of a European wine that actually has no connection to the place that we're living in. And we also both felt a real sense of urgency around the fact that those grapes are not doing well in Virginia during a time of climate change. It is increasingly stormier, droughtier. We have had 2 years of intense drought followed by 12 inches of rain in May. So if you like wine and if you want to keep drinking Virginia wine, you must be looking at something different in the future, because those same European grapes are so prone to mildew and fungus and need to be sprayed 25 times in a growing season sometimes if you want them to actually be able to make good wine. So for us, the idea is we enjoy wine. Wine doesn't have to be so serious, right? It doesn't always have to be that way. But if you want to enjoy wine in a future in Virginia, which I do want, my family lives here now. I have a 5-year-old. I have a small farm here. You have to be thinking about ways that we can grow wine grapes that actually will, they actually want to be here, right? And so for us, that's where hybrids come in. The hybrid grapes that Ben talked about quite a bit on the panel earlier. That is for us sort of the connection to climate change. And, I really appreciated, Rob, you said earlier, you talked about imagination. We feel very similarly about the concept of imagination. There is a very possible dire future, but I also think there are possible really joyful futures that we can imagine. And to do that, people have to continue to experiment and try new things in order for us to be able to, do these things that we love and enjoy in a climate change future. Yeah.
Yeah, John, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure, thanks. I appreciate the question. So I guess the 2 parts of that, the significance of place in what we're doing and sustainability as an element of that. And I guess I've been thinking a lot about sustainability over the last couple of years especially. And the more I think about it, sustainability in locality are two sides of the same coin. And it gets back to this very traditional way of approaching your community and land stewardship. And it is in many ways a refutation of our modern economic model. Long supply chains, specialization, commoditization, separation from producers to consumers. And I think what used to happen a long time ago is people were naturally sustainable, because you're not going to pollute your own field that you grow stuff in. It just doesn't make any sense. You don't want to do that. You don't want to contaminate your own water supply. You don't want to pollute your own rivers, because that's your sustenance. That's how you live your life. That's how your community exists, because these things are so vital and important to you. And over time, what I've seen happen is we've grown so disconnected from the producers, and we've inherited this luxury of not having to think about or worry about or consider the production side of things, and whatever happens there doesn't impact our lives, because you go to the supermarket and stuff is just there. And I think our experience here over the last 7 years has been a much tighter focus, and it's brought into stark relief how important very local land stewardship actually is, and what an old concept it actually is. Trying to make sure that we keep our own backyard clean, and we do it not just for our family, but for all the families and people in the community around us.
This sort of ties into where I wanted to go with you, Rob, because on your site, and in the way that you talk about what Oyster provides to people, you want to point out those places. You want to point out where you're getting your ingredients from, where you're getting, your equipment from, where everything. Place matters. Lock, stock, and barrel. It's not just fresh Maine lobster tails, like that kind of thing, right? It's like you care about. I imagine. And if I'm wrong on this, let me know. But given the awards that you've won, given the profile that you have, your inbox and voicemail must be filled with everybody who's trying to pitch you something that they think is going to align with your vision. And you talk about being 1% better every day. And I imagine that if you are getting those emails and those voicemails of like, yeah, you're getting your seaweed mulch from this place, but our seaweed mulch is that much, that if you're intrigued, that you're going to look into it a little bit more, kind of thing. When you're looking at people that you want to bring into your fold for your vision, for that sense of here, where does that thought start, and then where does that conversation go for you?
Jeez. Where does I think I have no thoughts.
Do you get a lot of emails? Do you get a lot like constant pitches, and are most of them garbage?
We do, but I'd say most of it is garbage.
Yeah,
like it's not really folks like that are sitting at this table really don't have the time to just come and pitch. We find each other through the networks. I think that's one of the things we look at is, who else are you working with, and why are you working with them? What are your practices actually? Like you read on my website what we're doing, but you don't know if that's really true, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, it is. Everyone it is, I promise. But
with my profession, it's trust but verify.
Exactly.
So
how do you know that? I think it's important to make actual visits to those, and that's why when we're talking about place and where we are, we have that ability, we have that luxury to actually go and see the products, see the people that are actually growing the food. What's the conditions like for everyone that's actually working there? Are you really doing what you're saying? And I think that's the biggest point for us. Local doesn't always mean good. Also,
go deeper on that, please, because that is so important, especially in beer these days. But I mean, also same with like restaurants as well. And it's
And I think the beer thing is one of the best examples, right? And that's probably where I can say we get the pitches. We say, oh, we're a local brewery. What does that mean? You could have us on your list, and you look into it. It's like, where are you getting your grain from? Where are the hops come from? What is the water source that you're using? And none of those things rarely add up to actually being anything local that's contributing back to our community or even our economy. So just because you have a business somewhere, then I guess the local target is a local business too, if you want to look at it that way. So, I mean, it's really important that there's actually the resources are coming there, but that doesn't always mean it's good. Same thing with product. You could be growing local produce, but spraying pesticides, using things that shouldn't grow here, really bad practices like just tilling and whatnot. So there has to be more than just local. And I think one of the classic things we say is you could say you're local, you pull up in a big diesel truck, you're idling outside of my restaurant for 20 minutes, fumes are coming out, you're bringing everything in plastic bags, and you've sprayed everything with, pesticides, fungicides, etc. So that really doesn't mean anything. And same thing goes for restaurants. It's a local business, but what's actually local about it? What are they contributing? And what's the point of it? I think, everyone mentioned this. The regionality is so important. It's something that's lost, especially in a world where everything's kind of for clicks and it's quick buzzwords and you're doing trends just to get people to pay attention to your product, and we're losing regionality. So if an area is really known for their bread and they're doing these like tartines and toast, now it's like, here's the trend that's happening in America, and it kills the spirit of something that's really beautiful and organic happening in a region. Now it becomes diluted and washed out, and now it's kind of corny that they're doing something, and we're losing that at a rapid pace because of that.
Sarah, you're nodding along again vigorously with something like this.
Yeah. Well, Rob said a lot of good stuff, as Rob does, but I think I was nodding along specifically about this idea of when you said like local doesn't mean good. It's like I agree. And I think that I feel like some people would want to push back on that, because a lot of what we're saying here is that we want to be working in community with people who are near us. We're talking about place. So why wouldn't something local be necessarily good? And you mentioned a lot of reasons why that's the case. For me also, I think we focus a lot on the fact that this product is being produced within and shared with people in our community, right? So like, we're not making it locally, we're not making it sustainably for the buzzwords. We're making it that way because I hope I can talk to the people in this room or like some veggie farmers who are very close friends of ours, and we feel sort of like a shared sense of pride, and like nothing needs to be obfuscated in that product. Like, we're all doing our best. And like sometimes I'll be like, like this year my pet nat wasn't bubbly, and like here's why. And it was this interesting vintage variation, and this thing happened. And I can share that story transparently and clearly with my friends and neighbors, and know that like we're all meeting each other on even ground. There's nothing that we're sort of like obfuscating or not sharing with each other in the interest of like selling something. That's not to say that you don't need to sell things. And I think that's something that's missing from this conversation as well, is that like boutique local things are really
You got the mic, go for it. Like, this is not
boutique and local things are really gorgeous. And you were drawing like a contrast earlier with something highly commoditized like Amazon. But at the end of the day, there needs to be some middle ground where like people can actually like make a living. We haven't really talked about labor or anything like that.
We're going to get to it.
Yeah. People need to be able to make a living while still feeling sort of like proud of these products that they produce. But just getting back to the community piece, like I do think that in a world where everyone's sort of meeting each other at, on even ground at the table, where we feel like we can share transparently with each other, that is like this great privilege of producing products like this. I'm drinking John's beer right now, and like we can talk to each other, and sometimes we're like, it's not exactly where I wanted it to be, and we can share that with each other, and we still enjoy it. And I'm always like, this beer is still great. It's fine.
This is exactly where it's meant to be.
Yeah. No, but as an example. And I think that spirit is actually more important than anything, right? Because the local not always being good, I think if people are meeting each other on that even ground, like you're moving the needle forward. Yeah.
With local not always being good, and I want Kristen to just sort of weigh in on this, pretty quick, right? Because the longevity of the brewery, the beers, again, not blowing smoke, like world-class beers, and at one point on the verge of extinction, Michael Jackson, the great beer writer, gets a lot of credit with reviving Lambic by writing about it and saying this needs to come back. And it's sort of, brought into the general consciousness again as beer drinkers in the late 70s and 80s of like, oh, we should be drinking Goose, we should be drinking Lambic, like we should be paying attention to these, then obscure Belgian styles. And then I feel like I was part of the drinking group that came up at the right time where, we had Shelton Brothers and we had all of these, great availabilities of things coming out. So you could taste world-class examples. And then everybody else is like, well, I can do that too. Like I can put in a cool ship. I can do my own thing. I can, and local not always being good because I would rather drink Dre Fonteinen Lambic than somebody else's interpretation out of, Ohio, and don't come at me, Buckeyes. I'm just saying, for example, like, I'm just throwing out a state, like that kind of thing. Jersey, fine. I'll do my own state, a Lambic coming out of Jersey, like maybe it's great, but it's not going to be world class kind of thing, because it takes time and everything. How has that been for you all of now that there are, especially in the U.S., and you know the market here, 9,600 breweries, everybody had a sour program at some point, and like I'm not even going to talk about Brettanomyces and sour, all of the fallacies and everything, but like how what's the challenge been of, I'll say, fighting back against local with that idea of local is better when you guys clearly have the superior product?
Woof. Well, I guess I would say, it is a challenge for sure.
And I'm editorializing, but I'm standing by.
No,
like, come at me, bros.
That's absolutely an issue we have. And you know what? It also starts locally. I probably shouldn't name a lot of names, but there are a lot of local.
Go for it.
No, we'll speak in generalizations, platitudes, whatever. I was talking about this earlier in the panel, but like during the sort of industrialization of Lambic in the 70s and 80s, so many formerly, producers working in the same way that we were shifted. A lot of them were bigger and just realized, and to Sarah's point, like everybody has to make a living. It was tough times for Lambic. Everybody was drinking Jupiler or whatever in Belgium at that point. So it's understandable that they would want to shift towards something that was easily that was easy to reproduce, that appealed to the masses, and so on and so forth. We were the dummies who, I shouldn't say we, it was only Armand at that point by himself, who was so stubborn. His dad told him it was something probably with Flemish expletives, but he basically said, this is a terrible business model, don't do it, and Armand stuck by that. So the other producers were already going sort of like, they were maintaining the tradition, and they were sort of sticking by what Lambic was supposed to be, and just taking little steps here and there and towing the line and seeing what they could do to make things a little bit easier, more consistent, and just more sound for business. So there's that front, and that today has grown into something entirely different, where you do have these massive producers who are doing something that is almost unrecognizable as Lambic in some ways. I mean, the definition in Belgium, like the actual definition, I don't know the specific percentage, but it's something like 2 or 3% of the overall, contents of a bottle have to be spontaneously fermented. So you have producers who are making a wheat beer, pasteurized, filtered, added, sulfate, potassium, all these other things that are added to it, artificial flavorings, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like putting a drop of Lambic in it, and that becomes Lambic. On the flip side of it, so let's say mid-aughts, late-aughts. That's late-aughts is about when I got into this, working with Fonteinen and Cantillon at the time, with Shelton Brothers, whom you mentioned. It was interesting because it was like, wow, now people know what a sour beer is, because at the time everybody thought sour just meant, oh, it's off, something's wrong with this. Nobody had any idea what it was. It exploded. But then what we have had an issue with is just people categorizing it as sour beer, quote unquote. I mentioned the Belgian monolith of all Belgian beer is good earlier when we were talking, and it's the same thing with sour beer. It's like, oh, it's all just sour. Lambic is very different. it should have acidity, but that's just one component that goes into it. And it's so hard to explain to people. To Sarah's point earlier, she was saying it's nice to be local where we can commune and, talk about this with our customers who are coming from up the road or whatever. We don't have that luxury. I mean, we do to some extent at the brewery, but we're selling in, we're small. We're doing 2,000 barrels this year, I think. But we can't, we're selling in probably 20 countries and 25 US states. So we have like a bunch of fine print on the back of the label. Nobody reads that, or some people do. Or Sarah's raising her head. But So explaining what goes into every bottle, it's been tough, and we're actually redesigning the labels to make it more simple. And it's not to dumb it down necessarily. It's to like, if I have 30 seconds or 15 seconds to get my point across to somebody, like, okay, we put the equivalent of 1 pound of raspberries in this bottle of beer. They were grown at this farm down the road. It took 4 years to make this beer. When everything is all said and done, it's not to mention 11 years of growing our own, or working with farmers to grow our own crops and stuff. There's just like so much that's so hard to condense. It's a huge challenge. And so when you have our beer, that's $29.99 a bottle on a shelf, if we're lucky, next to a sour beer, quote unquote, or whatever. It's not quote unquote. It is a sour beer. Yeah. Right next to it. It's like, why would you ever choose the one that's 3 times as expensive? So it's tough.
John, take a day like today out of the equation. How often do people show up at your door here wanting to drink beer, but actually care about the story as well? Like they've heard about you, they're here for beer, they look around, it's a beautiful setting, there's comfortable seating, there's nice music playing, that kind of thing. And, they can go to any brewery anywhere and, have a similar, I'm using air quotes, experience of going to a brewery where the beer is made kind of thing. What percentage do you think of people drill into the field without you having to initiate that conversation?
So it's a great question. Let me take it up a level.
Please.
As I understand it, at its core is, do people care? Is this resonating with people? Yeah. Do words matter? Does intention matter? Does all the stuff that all of us here spend all of our waking hours on all these details to make sure everything is just so, does that make a difference? Does that resonate with people? Yes, it does. Okay. It resonates with people. And in our experience, the momentum grows over time. And this is maybe both what Sarah and Rob said before a little bit about what's local. And implicit in that is the intention. And I think that's what I gathered from Rob's response was just because it's local doesn't mean it's quality, doesn't mean it's good. And to me, the intention comes into that. And I think that's maybe part of what I heard from Sarah is this idea of if you have intentionality and if you can share that intentionality with other people around you, it creates a different dynamic. And this is, I think, the beauty of local, without it being a cliche thing to say. That's the strength of local, is that I can pick up the phone and talk to Rob or vice versa, and he can say, tell me about this beer, what's going on here. And we do that. We'll text back and forth and to understand what the thing is that's going, because he cares deeply about the experience in his establishment, as he should. And so he wants to make sure what's going in there and what he's sharing shares his reflection of what he's trying to represent to his customers. Yeah. And so I think from our perspective, 100% of the people come here understand it. Not necessarily when they arrive, but I would say that we have a pretty good experience when people show up. And if we're given 20 seconds to explain the operation, people tend to think about things maybe just a little bit differently. And maybe that's the 1% improvement we're making day to day. And then people walk away saying, oh, I didn't know you could grow barley locally for beer. And this beer tastes good. And I want to come back here and learn more about this. And Christian, I hear you about the bottles. It's really challenging getting a lot of information in a very small piece of real estate and have it be both compelling and resonate with people who don't have a lot of time to focus on that. And I would layer on top of that, and I think all of us have this same headwind. A lot of what we're doing is not within the contours of the conventional marketplace. And so it's not just compared to what's happening right here, but it's also, here's a new way of looking at things, and you have to explain that construct first, and then you have to explain what it is within that new construct. So it's almost kind of two different stages of engagement, which I think makes it complex and makes all the words on that small little bottle label that much more challenging. But I think it's super important. This is also something that we work on a lot to make sure that we can reflect what's in the bottle transparently and the intention behind it, and then a consumer can make an educated decision on if that's the right fit for them.
Does that track with you, Sarah?
Does. Although, okay. Hear me out. I'm sitting here wondering if we're all being a little snobby. I don't know.
Oh, we are 100%.
Yeah,
I'm going to get to that in just a second.
But I also hate that, right? We are all walking this fine line of being we want to be approachable enough that people know what we're doing, but we also think it's really important that we're doing these things intentionally. And that is just the hardest needle to thread, right? Rob spoke to this earlier. I would love to be at the point where I don't have to explain why what I do is important, right? That is what you are trying to fit onto a label. You're trying to be this is why what I do is important. And nobody wants to have to self-justify that over and over and over again in order to sell what they're selling, right? I do think that is an extremely hard needle to thread. I also find, and I would love to hear from both the fine dining perspective and also the beer perspective. Again, I know I'm the weird wine person in the room, but you probably have seen.
You're the only one who said that, by the way. None of us are thinking that or even putting that vibe out, but yeah.
But I think if you are sort of tuned into the food and beverage world at all, you have probably seen headlines that people are drinking less wine, right? The wine
and beer and spirits.
Is it beer and spirits as well? Okay. So clearly I am the weird wine person. So it's funny because I will talk to people and they'll be are you feeling that? Are you selling less wine? And I'm no, I am not selling less wine. And to be fair, I'm very small, right? Quartzwood is fairly boutique, but everyone who purchases our wine, they do so because the story does resonate, because the intentionality does resonate, or because it's delicious, right? And a lot of people are people who say to me oh, I don't like grocery store wine, but I like your wines, whether that is because of the fact that they have no sulfites in them, whether it's because of the fact that they are they enjoy sort of the sustainability aspect. I don't know, frankly, but I think it's interesting that probably on a commodity beverage level, those trends are very obvious. I would be interested for someone who's more broadly distributed worldwide. But our customer base is interested and
You're
wants
agreeing with that question. Yeah.
Do you want to talk? Yeah. So our customer base is interested and wants to drink our wine. It is an active choice. So I think that's a sort of a missing perspective in what we're talking about in this consumer story here as well. It's a hard needle to thread, but at the same time, I do think that like John was saying, I wouldn't do this if I was just this crazy person, standing on the corner being drink this funny hybrid that has no sulfites in it. There are people who care. And so there's that interested group. And then it's sort of the next level of who are the people who could be interested, right?
So this is where I wanted to go with you, Rob, because what you're doing is, I'm going to use the word conceptual because I don't have a better word in my vocabulary at the moment, but it is so different from other restaurants that I've encountered. And you've gotten the accolades because of the thought that you've put into it. But there is a barrier for people to get to you. And it's, somebody who is doing the drive-through on a Thursday is not going to wake up the next morning and be I should go get a reservation at Oyster. If all they do is the drive-through kind of thing, and it's there's a financial barrier, there's a class barrier, there's all sorts of things that happen. But as you look down this pyramid of where you are, and Sarah used the word fine dining, and I don't know if you'd use that to describe what you do, but it is important and interesting and flavorful and well sourced and thoughtful, versus hey, this was created in a lab and now we're serving it to the masses. There's steps in between what that is and what you are. Is there a way to bridge that gap? Can you,
Absolutely.
because those people who are at the I'm visualizing a pyramid as I'm saying this. So those places that have Hamburger University, let's just say, are not necessarily trying to steer their regular customers to you. You know, so you're trying to pull from there. So how do you reach out that hand? Because there is a financial barrier, there is a perception barrier, there's a class barrier, there's all sorts of things. And I'm not asking you to speak for everybody here in your rarefied air, but
no, it's fine. It's an interesting thing. So accessibility, I think every producer and farmer we work with is accessible at the farmer's market. You can buy the same produce we do, and I think majority of the time the prices do not vary much from what you would see in the supermarket. I just think the accessibility to get there is a little bit more difficult, having more farmers markets available, but fine dining, sure, we can call it that. I mean, the restaurant has turned into more of a special occasion place. That's fine with me. The important part was being able to pay farmers, producers, makers the correct price they should get paid. And employ people at a livable wage as well, and not exploit. So at the bottom line, we're not really the most highest profiting restaurant, but I think in terms of work culture and supporting our local economy, we're doing a great job there. I wouldn't say it's a class thing. There's a price to eat at our restaurant, but in the city, we probably are the most affordable tasting menu you could go to, with probably the most intentional and quality produce from our region. And the accolades are an interesting thing. I think it draws in more people to us. It's never the intention of anything. We're not aiming for these like targets to get these accolades, but it opens more folks' eyes. I think there's a lot of individuals who are in that zone where they can afford to come to our restaurant very easily that normally wouldn't have if we didn't have that validation from, say, a Michelin guide or something. And that opens their eyes. So I think you hear about trickle down a lot, and many times it doesn't work, but I think our end goal is taking what we've learned in this environment where we can pay everyone really well and then make it maybe smaller projects, more accessible food in the long run.
Yeah. And John, that scores with what you're doing. Yeah, you can grab this one.
I wanted to just comment on that real quick about the accessibility and the price, because I think it's an important point. And this is an imperfect analogy, and I'm sure there's more elegant ways to capture the idea, but I think of it sometimes as auto industry. So you have Formula One, and then you have whatever cars that are on the roads that anyone can buy. The affordable selection of vehicles. Formula One costs a lot of money to do, and there's a lot of advances and technologies that go into that, and they're at the cutting edge of leading all these technologies forward. Most people are not buying a Formula One car. It's just not possible to do. But
it's for entertainment. It's for
it is, but it's also in the auto industry itself. It also pushes it forward. So it advances technologies, it advances innovation, it advances all these things that eventually comes into the rest of the auto industry, and so it plays a role in the industry itself as a way to move things forward. And so sometimes I look at producers in food and beverage as maybe it is more expensive, maybe it has to be more expensive because of what's happening in that individual organization. But if you zoom out a little bit and you see, hey, maybe Rob is a template here for other places to do this, and in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe it will become more affordable when there's more economies of scale, when more people are doing this. And so whether or not a single place is expensive today might be too narrow a view. Instead, I would maybe suggest looking more broadly at it to say what role is it playing in the bigger scheme of things, longer term, for the regional economy, for the farmers here. So we do our very hardest to make sure that our prices are a large value to people who buy our beer. And when you compare it, I think Christian referenced this earlier, when you look at two beers side to side and they're both in ostensibly the same category, people say, oh, this one's 3X and this one's 1X of the same beer.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that goes into that other one. And so it's part of this communication is trying to convey the value proposition to customers. And it's imperfect and it's not easy and you don't always get it right. But I think part of this is zooming out and saying, what is the larger long-term role that this place is playing versus just doing what it is today. Oh, and by the way, you also have to make a profit and stay in business and pay your bills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I had to, can I share a hot take? So I think what you said is really important in terms of thinking of like the larger picture. I think my hot take, and then we're all circling around this, is that probably everyone's value-added product at this table is inaccessible to many people. And that is okay. Not because I think like people should not have things accessible to them, but because of exactly what you said, John. There is always going to be a wide range of prices of products, like you said, the cheaper beer on the shelf. But there needs to be someone sort of like pushing the needle forward so that then consumers are exposed to it and then can like demand it elsewhere, right? Like that's just the world that we live in. So I think it's very possible that even if we work really hard to make things like accessibly priced, it is still inaccessible to people. And I guess I'm saying, and this is not for comfort, I'm saying like that's okay, because for some of us, like that is the project. Like we need to be able to pay people a living wage. We need to be able to pay farmers appropriately. We need to be able to make back whatever you put into that product and then move the needle forward so that people expect that type of product elsewhere if they enjoy it. So,
yeah, completely agree, first of all. But I was also going to go to something less romantic and more just a challenge we in the alcohol industry face, which is the system is built around commodities. It's not built around the type of things we're doing. So for us in particular, Drew Fonteinen, so we don't have direct access to the U.S. market, period. Sarah was saying earlier, she hasn't seen sales go down at the winery. She has relationships with the customers, and we've seen the same thing in Belgium. We have seen them tank is not the right word, but we've seen the decline that everybody's seeing on like a larger global scale. I think a lot of that is due to trends, whatever. Some of that in the U.S. is just like people are feeling, hardship, and they're not buying fancy things, whatever. And some of that is, a lot of it is from us, and we have to assign a certain cost to it. We have to make sure that we're paying our employees, it's what everybody's been saying, paying our farmers. But then it comes to the US and we have to work through this system that's based on, at least on the beer side, I can't speak too much to the wine side in terms of history and how the 3-tier system works, but we have to sell to, well, first of all, an importer, which we've started doing ourselves to cut out that percentage and make it more accessible for people. But then through a distributor and through retailers who all work on a certain percentage. Restaurant industry is obviously very different in terms of cost. But if we're talking strictly like wholesalers or, off-premise retailers, and everybody has their overhead. Everybody has, the things they need to cover. For us who are, we're making beer where the cost is more than, it could be 3 times a case of industrial lager or something like that. Just our cost at production before anything else.
Yeah.
And then you add these percentages at every step, it gets further and further away from what is accessible to people. So yeah, it's like we can do everything we can to spread the word and make it so that people can afford to buy it if they want to, but at the same time, the system is just built around something else entirely. That's a whole different podcast, though, I think.
Yeah, I know. This has opened up like 9 different avenues. But Robert, I wanted to go back to something that you said on the special occasions, right? Because that sort of struck me as in the beer space. And probably in the wine space as well, there's always this idea of like, oh, if I have one of these bottles, I'm going to save this for a special occasion. And then that almost never happens, where it's different for you because you can do anniversaries or you could do first dates or you can do, whatever kind of thing. And in everything that we've been talking about with the sense of here or who you're working with or who's walking through your door, that idea of a special occasion and what people walk in expecting and what they get when they leave. Can you just kind of share, like from your perspective in the kitchen, the importance of that to you? right? Because if I call John up and I say, hey, I have this bottle of this barley wine that you gave me a couple of months ago, and I just had a really good day at work, and I opened it right now, he's going to feel good about that, like, kind of thing. Like, and same things are if I had one of your wines, and obviously I have a cellar full of Dre that, like, I'm never going to get to, but like, but it's great. But like from your perspective on the special occasion thing, with that sense of here, where that here is there for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the beauty of restaurants, and perhaps what you all do too, is it's one of the last real analog human connections that we can have with people. And the fact that they're choosing these moments to celebrate with us is extremely rewarding. Yes, some folks come in with high expectation, but I think when you have that human element, you really give someone a genuine experience, and it's not robotic, and you're just there, and you're celebrating their special moment with a very special moment in nature at the same time, right? Like, they're here celebrating their anniversary, they're so psyched, and you're like, we just got the first strawberries in today. And that adds layers to, like, that's their special day. And then, I mean, we're all human. It feels a little selfish. Like, you believe this? On our anniversary, we got the first strawberries here today too, and you just feel so special, And I think that's like what's really amazing about it when you're talking about place and time and where you are, and you're celebrating here with a human being. Is just like, it's so cool, and you can have someone leave and they're just like blissful, and it's a real escapism, and hopefully it changes their perspective on the world when they walk out a little bit too.
I like that. I'm going to ask you to hold on to your mic. So on this particular podcast that we're recording right now, I've been, since the beginning of COVID, asking people what I call the green door question. And so there's a television show called The Good Place. And in the last season, they introduce a concept of a green door where the characters can walk through it and basically do whatever they want to do. And so if we had a green door on our plane of existence right now, and this conversation ended, and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking?
Oh, geez, that's
and
crazy.
By nature of holding the mic, you get to go first, Rob.
I get to go anywhere? Geez. I was just on a plane flight, and I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time ever. I know, it's crazy. And I just want to go hang out with some hobbits in a pub and drink beer. That's what I'd want to do.
I like that.
All right. I don't know if that's a real question, but
I mean, no, the question was real. The answer is
awful, maybe. But yeah, I don't know, somewhere like fantasy. I could easily get in a plane and go anywhere in this world.
Right?
So,
yeah.
So I think just going somewhere that I couldn't go in reality, I think, is where that green door would take me.
Okay. Sarah, I can modify it if you want. I can add winery to the mix as well. It doesn't have to just be pub or brewery. But bonus points if you can, yeah.
I mean, I love pubs and breweries. Oh, gosh, this is a really good question. Okay, for the sake of time, I will choose what is possibly not the perfect answer. In Cambridge, in the UK. No, Oxford. Oh my gosh, someone's going to fact check me. This is terrible. In Oxford, in the UK, there are a bunch of really wonderful pubs, right? With like cask ales and things like that. There is one that is the place where supposedly former President Bill Clinton smoked but didn't inhale. And it is a wonderful place. It is like through winding places in Oxford streets. It's gorgeous. I spent time there a very long time ago with a really dear friend of mine, and it just remains this like gem of a memory in my head. And I think that's sort of the point of everything that we're talking about here, is that it's really not the product at all. It's like the space and the feelings and what you're sharing, just like Rob was saying about special occasions. So I think that's where I'd be.
All right.
Yeah.
I like that. Christian, where are you going?
Just hitting that, echoing the same point. Probably like San Sebastian in Spain. It's just like you can drink chocolate for like €2 a glass. It's all fantastic. Well, not all fantastic, mostly fantastic. The food is amazing everywhere you go. You walk around. It's touristy, but you can go in the winter and it's great. It's just like one of those experiences that has like imprinted on me, being there with my wife. We can take our 3-year-old someday, maybe. I don't know how into pinchos she'll be But yeah, she's adventurous, but I don't know if she's into like octopus and stuff at this point. But yeah, no, it's just such a lovely.
You gotta start him young.
Yeah, it's such a lovely experience. And going back to everything we're talking about, it's all. I mean, the Basque culture is so specific, down to the language that's so unique. Everything about it. I don't know. I love that place. I would go back any chance I got. So.
All right, John Branding, where are you going?
I feel like I want to tag along with Christian. That sounds pretty amazing.
You could babysit.
That sounds pretty amazing. So we, Bonnie and I lived in Germany for a number of years, and so we've had the good fortune to visit a lot of places. And I agree that it's about that time you go to the place, and what we say here from day one is it's all about the beer, and it's not about the beer at all. And so I'd be happy at a number of those places. Maybe this is a cop-out, maybe it's not, but where I'd want to be is right here.
Okay.
Bonnie and I built the place that we want to be.
I love that. That's awesome. And we're lucky to be here with you. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
And thanks to all you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
My thanks to the family Branding for a weekend of hospitality at their farm. It is so close to DC. Make it part of your travel plans in the very near future. I'm not overstating it when I say that this is an incredible spot and making beers unlike anything else in the country. Go visit allaboutbeer.com, where you can check out original articles, new articles, as well as the archives, which go all the way back to 1979. You can reach me anytime on email at johnholl@allaboutbeer.com. That's JOHNHOLL. And All About Beer is on social media at All About Beer. Before we run, here is a word from this week's sponsors. Stomp Stickers isn't just a website. It's your custom printing partner with over 30 years of expertise. Their support squad is ready to help by phone, chat, or email. Combining top-notch customer service with a super easy-to-use site, they're all about making sure you get exactly what you need, fast. Shop with confidence thanks to their 100% satisfaction guarantee. Visit stompstickers.com and use code THINKBEER for 15% off of your first order. If you're running a brewery, owner or operator, Beer 30 by The Fifth Ingredient is the ultimate command center. The most powerful brewery management software on the market, Beer 30 handles the entire brewing workflow from recipe development to production. Once your beer is brewed and ready, it seamlessly manages your inventory and streamlines your brewery's sales and distribution, all in the same easy-to-use platform. Beer 30 lets you get back to the beer and to the people that made you fall in love with this industry in the first place. And no other brewery management software gives you the ability to truly master your business and get the insights that you need to thrive in an increasingly competitive industry. Visit thefifthingredient.com/allaboutbeer today to learn more and receive 3 free months of Beer 30. If you want more audio content, All About Beer has a podcast channel. Search and subscribe All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday at 5 p.m. And the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Weber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday. And that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.